She bought a collapsed courthouse for 25 cents at a county auction where wealthy real estate moguls with bottomless bank accounts stood watching in dead silence. Not one of them willing to raise their paddle for what should have been the investment opportunity of a lifetime. But Sophia Castellano soon learned that some bargains come with a price far higher than money could ever measure, and that the secrets buried beneath crumbling stone walls were worth killing for. The October wind carried the scent of fallen leaves and something else. Something that made Sophia Castellano's skin prickle with unease as she stood among the crowd gathered outside the Ravencrest County administrative building. 53 people, by her count, all dressed in business attire, all eyeing each other with the calculated wariness of competitors at a high-stakes poker game. Except they weren't looking at each other with wariness. They were looking at her with something else entirely. Something that made her want to turn around and leave. Sophia adjusted the strap of her leather portfolio and reminded herself why she was here. At 32 years old, she'd built a successful career flipping distressed properties in Northern California, turning forgotten buildings into profitable ventures. The collapsed courthouse in downtown Thornhaven represented exactly the kind of challenge she specialized in: high risk, high reward, and overlooked by investors who lacked vision. She'd done her research. The structure had partially collapsed during a severe winter storm 2 years ago, taking down the entire eastern wing and half the roof. But the property sat on prime commercial real estate, nearly half an acre in the heart of Thornhaven's historic downtown district. Even accounting for demolition costs, environmental assessments, and complete reconstruction, the numbers worked. The land alone was worth at least $300,000, probably closer to $400,000 given recent development in the area. The auctioneer, a gaunt man named Vernon Price, stepped up to the portable podium with none of the enthusiasm Sophia had seen from him at previous county auctions. His usually animated demeanor was replaced by something flat, almost resigned. He looked like a man performing a duty he'd rather avoid. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vernon began, his voice carrying across the parking lot without his usual theatrical flair. "We're here today for the auction of multiple properties seized by Ravencrest County for unpaid taxes and liens. We'll begin with Lot 23, the former Ravencrest County Courthouse, located at the corner of Blackwell Street and Montgomery Avenue in downtown Thornhaven." Sophia glanced around at her competition. She recognized at least a dozen serious players in the local real estate market. Martin Greenhouse, who'd made millions converting old warehouses into luxury lofts. Patricia Chun, whose development firm had transformed half of downtown Ashwood into upscale retail spaces. Robert Kincaid, whose construction company had the resources to handle even the most challenging renovation projects. All of them had deeper pockets than Sophia. All of them understood the value of downtown real estate. And all of them were staring at the ground, at their shoes, at the distant mountains. Anywhere except at the auctioneer or the photographs of the courthouse displayed on easels beside the podium. Vernon cleared his throat. The property consists of 0.47 acres of commercially zoned land, including the structure of the former courthouse built in 1892. As you can see from the photographs, approximately 40% of the building collapsed during the storm of February 2023. The county has had the property inspected by 3 separate structural engineers, all of whom have concluded that the remaining structure is unstable and poses significant safety risks. He paused, as if giving people a chance to reconsider their attendance. The property is being sold as is, with no warranties or guarantees of any kind. The winning bidder assumes all liability for the structure, including any demolition, removal, or remediation required. The county will not provide access to any historical records or building plans for this property. That last detail struck Sophia as odd. County buildings usually had extensive documentation, blueprints, renovation records, maintenance logs. Why would they specifically mention that those wouldn't be available? "We'll start the bidding," Vernon continued, and here he paused again, longer this time. "At 25 cents. The number hung in the air like something impossible. 25 cents. For half an acre of prime downtown real estate. Sophia's hand moved automatically, raising her paddle with the number 47 printed on it. She expected an immediate counterbid. She expected a bidding war that would drive the price up into the tens of thousands, maybe more. But the silence that followed felt wrong. Not just the absence of competing bids, but something heavier, oppressive, the kind of silence that precedes something terrible. Vernon's eyes found her paddle, and for just a moment, Sophia saw something in his expression that made her blood run cold. It wasn't surprise. It was resignation, as if he'd been expecting this, dreading it even, but knowing it was inevitable. "We have 25 cents from paddle 47. Vernon announced, his voice suddenly tired. "Do I hear 50 cents? Nothing." Sophia turned slowly, looking at the faces around her. These were hardened real estate professionals, people who made their living identifying opportunities and capitalizing on them. They should have been fighting each other for this property. Instead, Martin Greenhouse was shaking his head slowly, his lips pressed together in a grim line. Patricia Chun had taken several steps backward, as if physically distancing herself from Sophia might protect her from something. Robert Kincaid was staring at Sophia with an expression she couldn't quite read. Was it pity? Warning? Fear? An elderly woman pushed through the crowd with surprising determination. She was perhaps 75, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that held a lifetime of accumulated knowledge. Sophia had seen her at previous auctions but had never learned her name. "Miss," the woman said, her weathered hand reaching out to grip Sophia's forearm with unexpected strength. "You need to lower that paddle right now. I don't understand." "Going once?" Vernon called out, the words seeming to catch in his throat. "That building has been waiting for someone like you," the elderly woman continued urgently. "Someone from out of town. Someone who doesn't know the history. Please, child, listen to an old woman who's lived in Thornhaven her entire life. That courthouse should never have been built where it is. And it should never, ever be opened again." "Why?" Sophia asked, but Vernon's voice cut through the moment. "Going twice. Because 23 years ago, they found something in that courthouse," the woman whispered, her grip tightening. "Something that should have stayed lost forever. They sealed it up, tried to pretend it didn't exist. But everybody in this town knows. And everybody knows what happens to people who go looking for it." Sophia felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her. The crowd had gone perfectly still, as if holding its collective breath. "What did they find?" she asked. The gavel came down with a crack that seemed to echo off the mountains in the distance. "Sold to paddle 47 for 25 cents. The reaction was immediate and unsettling. The crowd didn't erupt in conversation or move toward Vernon to bid on the next property. Instead, they dispersed rapidly, almost frantically, heading toward the parking lot with purposeful strides. Within 90 seconds, at least 40 of the 53 people who'd been there were gone. But not everyone left. As Sophia approached Vernon to complete the paperwork, she noticed a group of about a dozen people who'd moved to the far edge of the parking lot. They weren't leaving. They were watching her, waiting for something, their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. Vernon's hands actually trembled as he filled out the deed transfer form. He'd probably processed thousands of property transactions in his career, but his pen stuttered across the page as if his fingers were fighting the task. "I need your signature here, here, and here," he said, not meeting her eyes, pointing to 3 separate places on the document. Sophia signed quickly, her confidence beginning to waver. "Mr. Price, can you tell me what people are so concerned about? Why didn't anyone else bid?" Vernon looked up at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her regret asking. Not anger or frustration, but genuine fear mixed with resignation. "Miss Castellano," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one else could hear. "I've been the county auctioneer for 27 years. In that time, I've sold hundreds of properties. Some were beautiful, some were disasters. But that courthouse? That's the only property I've ever been specifically warned not to sell." "Warned? By whom?" "By people who matter in this county," Vernon said cryptically. He pushed the completed paperwork across the table toward her. "People who remember what happened in 2002. People who know why the records for that building were deliberately destroyed." "What happened in 2002? Vernon shook his head. "I've said too much already. But I'll tell you this, the storm that collapsed the East Wing wasn't an accident. Someone made sure that building would become structurally unsound. They wanted it condemned, so no one would have a reason to go inside. He stood up, gathering his materials with shaking hands. The deed is yours. The property is yours. What you do with it is your decision. But if you're smart, you'll resell it immediately without ever setting foot inside. Before Sophia could ask anything else, Vernon walked away quickly, almost jogging toward his car as if afraid someone might stop him. Sophia stood alone in the parking lot, holding a deed to a collapsed courthouse she'd bought for 25 cents, and feeling the weight of those watching eyes from across the lot. The warning. Sophia sat in her car for 15 minutes, staring at the deed and trying to make sense of what had just happened. Her phone buzzed with a text from her business partner, James, back in Sacramento. "How'd the auction go? Did you get the courthouse?" She typed back, "Got it for 25 cents. Something weird is going on here." 25 cents? That's impossible. What's the catch? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Before she could put her phone away, someone knocked on her window. Sophia jumped, her heart hammering, then felt foolish when she saw it was the elderly woman from the auction. She rolled down her window. "Can I help you?" "My name is Eleanor Blackwood," the woman said. "My family founded Thornhaven in 1847. I've lived in this town for 76 years, and I've never seen the community more divided than it was over that courthouse." "Divided how?" Eleanor looked around nervously, as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Can we talk somewhere private? There's a diner 3 blocks from here, the Copper Kettle. Meet me there in 10 minutes. What I need to tell you shouldn't be discussed in the open." Before Sophia could agree or refuse, Eleanor was walking away toward an old Buick sedan parked nearby. Sophia sat in her car, debating. Every instinct she'd developed in 10 years of real estate investment told her something was seriously wrong with this situation. The logical move would be to drive back to her hotel, contact a local attorney, and figure out how to resell the property immediately. But curiosity had always been both her greatest asset and her most dangerous weakness. She'd built her career on investigating properties other people were afraid to touch, on seeing potential where others saw only problems. 10 minutes later, she was sitting across from Eleanor Blackwood in a corner booth at the Copper Kettle, a classic small-town diner that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1970. Eleanor ordered coffee for both of them, then waited until the waitress had walked away before speaking. "What do you know about the history of that courthouse?" Eleanor asked. "Just what I read in the county records," Sophia admitted. Built in 1892, served as the county courthouse until 1999, when they built the new judicial complex on the north side of town. The old building was used for storage and county archives until it collapsed in 2023. "That's the official story," Eleanor said. "The sanitized version they put in the public records. But the truth is very different." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "That courthouse stopped being used for trials in 1999, yes. But it wasn't because they built a new facility. It was because of what Judge Harold Pemberton discovered in the basement." "What did he discover?" Eleanor's hands wrapped around her coffee cup as if seeking warmth on this cool October day. Judge Pemberton was renovating his chambers in early 1999. They were installing new shelving when workers discovered that one of the walls wasn't original to the building. It was a later addition, probably added in the 1920s or 1930s, designed to seal off something. "Seal off what?" "A hidden sublevel," Eleanor said. "A basement beneath the basement, if you will. When they finally broke through that wall, they found stone stairs leading down to a vault that wasn't on any of the original building plans." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. "What was in the vault?" Eleanor took a sip of coffee, her hands still trembling slightly. Judge Pemberton wouldn't tell anyone specifics. But within a week, the courthouse was quietly evacuated. All trials were moved to temporary facilities. The county commission held a closed emergency session. No public attendance. No minutes published. Within a month, they'd approved funding for a brand new courthouse complex, and the old building was declared surplus property. "But they didn't sell it then," Sophia noted. "Why not?" Because they couldn't agree on what to do with what was in that vault, Eleanor explained. Some county officials wanted to destroy everything. Others wanted to preserve it as evidence. A few wanted to use it for their own purposes. The debate went on for years, with the old courthouse sitting empty and locked, guarded 24 hours a day by private security. Guarded? For what? To keep people out, and to keep whatever was inside from ever seeing daylight. Eleanor's eyes were intense now, boring into Sophia's. But also because people kept trying to break in. Over the next 15 years, there were at least a dozen incidents of people attempting to access that building illegally. Were they caught? 3 of them were, Eleanor said grimly. The rest disappeared, vanished without a trace. No bodies were ever found, but everyone in Thornhaven knows what happened to them. Sophia felt her skepticism rising. This was starting to sound like a local urban legend, the kind of story small towns told themselves to add mystery to ordinary events. Eleanor seemed to sense her doubt. You think I'm just a superstitious old woman telling ghost stories. I can see it in your face. But answer me this, Miss Castellano. Why did every single real estate professional in Ravencrest County refuse to bid on property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? These are rational, profit-driven people. What would make all of them walk away from that kind of opportunity? It was a fair question. Sophia had been asking herself the same thing. Because they know, Eleanor continued, they know that everyone who's tried to access that vault has ended up dead or missing. They know that the storm that collapsed the East Wing wasn't natural. Explosives were planted in the foundation, set to go off during the next major weather event to provide cover. They know that powerful people in this county will do anything to keep what's in that vault from being revealed. What's in the vault? Sophia asked again. Eleanor shook her head. I honestly don't know the details, but I know it has to do with corruption at the highest levels of county government. Judge Pemberton told my late husband, they were old friends, that what he found in that vault was evidence of systematic theft and conspiracy going back decades. Evidence that would destroy dozens of prominent families if it ever became public. Then why not just destroy it? Because it's not just evidence against some people. It's insurance for others, Eleanor said. There are people who benefit from that evidence existing but remaining hidden. It keeps their enemies in check, gives them leverage. Destroying it would upset a very delicate balance of power. Sophia's mind was racing. If even half of what Eleanor was saying was true, she'd stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple distressed property investment. Why are you telling me this? Sophia asked. Because you seem like a decent person, Eleanor said sadly. And because I've watched too many people get hurt over this already. If you're smart, you'll sell that deed to one of the local power brokers for whatever they're willing to pay, and I guarantee someone will approach you with an offer within 24 hours, and then you'll leave Thornhaven and never come back. And if I don't? Eleanor stood up, leaving a $10 bill on the table for the coffee. Then I hope you're very, very careful, because the people who benefit from keeping that vault sealed have already killed to protect it. And they won't hesitate to kill again. She walked out of the diner, leaving Sophia sitting alone with a cold cup of coffee and a head full of disturbing questions. The first approach. Sophia returned to her hotel room at the Thornhaven Inn, a modest but clean establishment on the edge of downtown. She spread out her research materials on the desk, property records, historical documents, satellite imagery, and structural engineering reports she'd obtained from the county. Eleanor's story seemed far-fetched, but the facts were undeniable. A valuable property had sold for essentially nothing. Experienced professionals had refused to bid on it, and people were clearly afraid of something connected to that courthouse. She opened her laptop and began searching for more information. News archives for Thornhaven and Ravencrest County. Historical society records. Court documents. What she found was interesting and disturbing. In 1999, the same year Eleanor claimed the vault was discovered, there was indeed a sudden announcement about building a new courthouse. The official reason given was inadequate facilities for modern judicial needs. But the decision had been made with unusual speed and with funding that seemed to appear out of nowhere. More interesting was what happened to Judge Harold Pemberton. He'd resigned from the bench in 2000, citing health reasons. but Sophia found an obituary from 2002 reporting that he died in a single-car accident on a remote mountain road. The article mentioned that his death was ruled accidental, but included a strange quote from his widow. Harold knew too much, and it cost him everything. Sophia was reading through more articles when someone knocked on her hotel room door. She checked the peephole and saw a well-dressed man in his 50s standing in the hallway. Expensive suit, perfect posture, the kind of confidence that came from wealth and power. She opened the door but kept the security chain attached. "Can I help you?" "Miss Castellano, my name is Gregory Ashford. I'm an attorney here in Thornhaven. I represent several clients who have a keen interest in the property you purchased today. Might I come in and discuss a business proposition?" "How did you know where I was staying?" Gregory smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thornhaven is a small town, Miss Castellano. Word travels quickly. May I come in? I promise this will be worth your time." Against her better judgment, or perhaps because she wanted to see where this was going, Sophia removed the chain and let him in. Gregory entered with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. He glanced around the modest room with barely concealed disdain before turning his attention back to Sophia. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "My clients are prepared to offer you $50,000 for the Courthouse property. Cash, transferred to your account within 24 hours. All you need to do is sign over the deed." $50,000 for a property she'd bought for 25 cents. It should have been an easy decision. "That's quite generous," Sophia said carefully. "But the property is worth at least 3 or 4 times that amount, even accounting for demolition costs." "Under normal circumstances, perhaps," Gregory agreed. "But these aren't normal circumstances. That building is structurally unsound, potentially hazardous, and carries significant liability. My clients are offering you a premium price to take that liability off your hands." "Who are your clients?" "I'm not at liberty to disclose that information, but they're prominent members of the Thornhaven community with a vested interest in the property's future." Sophia crossed her arms. "Why do they want it so badly if it's such a liability?" Gregory's smile faltered slightly. "They have sentimental attachments to the building. It represents an important part of Thornhaven's history." "Then why did they let it sit empty and deteriorate for 25 years? The smile disappeared entirely. "Miss Castellano, I'm trying to do you a favor. My clients are prepared to pay you 2,000 times what you invested. That's an exceptional return for about 3 hours of ownership. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in selling right now." Gregory's expression hardened. "I strongly advise you to reconsider. That building is dangerous. The structural engineer's reports make it very clear that—" "I've read the reports," Sophia interrupted, "and I've renovated dozens of structurally compromised buildings. I know what I'm getting into." "Do you?" Gregory's voice took on an edge. "Do you really know what you're getting into, Miss Castellano? Have you asked yourself why that property was allowed to sit on the county's delinquent tax rolls until it could be auctioned off for pennies? Have you wondered why the county was so eager to be rid of it that they didn't even bother trying to recoup their investment? Why don't you tell me?" Gregory stood up, straightening his tie. "I'll give you 24 hours to think about my client's offer. $50,000 is more than fair. But I should warn you, the price only goes down from here. And the longer you hold onto that property, the more complicated your situation becomes." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact," Gregory said coldly. "Call me when you're ready to be reasonable." He left without another word, letting the door slam shut behind him. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. 2 approaches in one day, first Eleanor's warning, now Gregory's offer. Both confirmed that whatever was in that courthouse, people were desperate to control it. She looked at the deed lying on the desk. 25 cents. The best investment of her life, or the worst mistake she'd ever made. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't sell. What's in that courthouse will change everything. Trust no one, especially not Gregory Ashford." Sophia entered the courthouse at dawn, finding the hidden entrance behind Judge Pemberton's bookshelf. The vault below contained $34 million in cash and 70 years of corruption evidence. Bribes, blackmail, and organized crime connections reaching the highest levels of government. When corrupt officials confronted her, Sophia live-streamed everything to the FBI. Special Agent Rebecca Frost had been investigating for years, and Sophia's evidence was the breakthrough they needed. Within weeks, 47 officials were arrested. The criminal organization's money laundering operation collapsed. Families who'd lost property to corrupt land deals received restitution from the seized cash. William Thornhaven and Gregory Ashford faced federal conspiracy charges. The Ravencrest County government was restructured with oversight from state authorities. Sophia sold the courthouse property for $400,000, using the profit to establish a foundation supporting whistleblowers and investigating municipal corruption. Judge Pemberton's widow thanked her personally. "Harold would be proud. You finished what he started." The 25-cent investment hadn't just been about property. It had been about courage, the courage to dig deeper when others looked away, to fight corruption when staying silent was safer, and to prove that one person's integrity could bring down an empire of lies. Some bargains change your bank account. Others change who you are.